Today on Homeworthy, we're bringing you to Pennsylvania's horse country for a look inside author, artist, and interior designer Ellyn Spragins' exquisite home. As a creative, Ellyn's farmhouse-style home reflects her love for vibrant hues, inspiring artworks, and playful touches of modern design. Ellyn shows us around her beautiful gardens, which feature a foliage-filled allee, and her studio, where she spends much of her spare time if she is not tending to her gardens. Enjoy! You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Before today's episode, click the join button below to support all of the storytelling we do on this channel. Our growing community of members help to directly fund more videos so we can capture these extraordinary homes from around the world. So join today to receive early and exclusive access to new Homeworthy videos.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Ellyn Spragins, and you are welcome to my home, Bryn Ellyn, in Malvern, Pennsylvania. Come on in. I want to show you everything. I'm Ellyn Spragins, and welcome to my home. We call it Bryn Ellyn, and the reason for that is that my name Ellyn is spelled with a Y, and as you may know, the main line is sprinkled with a million strange spellings with a lot of Y's in them. So a friend of mine said we should name it Bryn Ellyn. Bryn means hill in Welsh, and this area was basically settled by a lot of Welsh Quakers. So that's the reason for that. We moved in here in 2015. This is a kind of a farmhouse style that's typical of Chester County, which is where we are in Pennsylvania. It's not truly a farmhouse, but it was styled that way when it was built in 1967. And it's notable from the outside for the stonework, and also in another room you'll see later, a beautiful giant kind of stone fireplace. That's the reason we call that room the cozy room. We found the house a little dark, and so we had a major renovation done by Gardner Fox, and you'll see a lot of evidence of that as I take you through. They did some wonderful things that has made the house full of light and really, really pretty now. This is my foyer. It's quite small, and so to try and help with that, we put in a gigantic mirror that makes it look like it's a little bit bigger, and a very small table with a light in it, because it's also not the lightest room. Also, I don't know if you can see this, but this wallpaper is a grass cloth, but it's backed with a metallic kind of material, so it has a little sheen to it when there's artificial light on it. But if we open the door, it just looks like a regular grass cloth, very natural looking. We wanted to sort of elevate this space a little bit, so we decided to put, this originally was a banister with just black on the top and white balusters, but I really like the graphic effect of the black, and it's fine paint of Europe, which is, of course, super glossy and super pretty. So that's our decisions and kind of really what we did in here. There's not that much space to do much more. But let's go into the green room. There's a lot more to talk about there. Here we are in the green room. I wonder if you can guess why we call it the green room. So in this room, one of the greatest things that happened with our renovation is Gardner Fox designed this beautiful coffered ceiling. I wanted a coffered ceiling, but we have 8-foot ceilings, so they couldn't be very deep. And I also wanted them to be sort of more modern and fresh looking than typical coffered ceilings. So I asked them to do very large diamond shapes on the ceiling. And so they did, and people always notice this and comment on it. And then to carry through the theme on the fireplace surround, they did these wonderful diamonds with the circles in the corners, and they are appliques, wooden pieces that are glued here and then painted, and it's very unusual. I think it's really gorgeous and, again, kind of fresh and modern. The other thing that I love in this room, speaking to fun and fresh, are my busts. So this is Monsieur Lapin. If you can believe it, these guys came from France, and his ears were intact. So you can imagine how much stuffing and everything else surrounded him. And then on the other side here, we have Professor Eccles. Eccles is my middle name. I think he's very impressive. This artist is a French plaster artist, and she obviously dresses them in 18th century attire. And sometimes she has entire figures made of them. I have the woman that owns the store that I bought these at in Philadelphia has one like about this size, just standing like a sentry in her living room. This is a piece of art that really is kind of a nod to horse country, which is where we are. We have a lot of open space in Chester County and tons of equestrians. I am not an equestrian, but this piece really is a nod to all of that in the area, but also it's beautiful because it's almost abstract. You only see the hair and the eyes, and then I also love the title of it, which is Blonde. So it's like this horse, this very sexy horse. You're just looking at her eyes here. And I went into Philadelphia because I wanted to get it framed in a lucite box, which I think, again, makes it more modern and fresh looking than something that would be framed. Over here, there's another piece of art that is by me. This is called Wonky Black Tulips. And it's a tablescape. I started doing tablescapes really only recently because a friend of mine commissioned me to do one for her. And I really liked the way it turned out. So I thought, okay, I'll try another one. So it hasn't been framed yet, but I kind of like it. I made up the flowers. They're not really flowers that look like that, but I wanted them to have a lot of personality. So that's what they're doing over there. Well, I want to tell you about when we bought this house. It was a sort of a strange, long courtship. We were not initially planning on living in this area. We just stopped here really to rent for a year while we looked for our warm climate and our first floor master and our downsized house. But I have a sister nearby, and it ended up being so great to be near her and also to be, in this lovely area that we didn't know very well. So we decided to buy a house and so we ended up buying, of course, one second floor master in a cold climate, not particularly downsized. So it wasn't what we planned. And when I walked in here, I did not think of green for this room. It was already a closed off room. It was a dead end room because this was completely wall. There's almost no reason to come to this room because it was sort of hard to get in and out of. But once we opened it up with Gardner Fox, I realized that we could go dark here. And I thought about navy blue because that's a really cool dark color too. But it seems a little more predictable. So I just thought, why not green? And I love green and black and white. One thing I didn't mention was that these drapes, I'm crazy about window treatments. And these are really, really special. I don't like anybody else to touch my window treatments either. But this has two trims on it. This little bead is one trim, and then this is another one. But the thing that's so special is it's a faux silk, and it's interlined. So there's a lining in the back, and then there's a lining inside, and that's what makes it have a little bit of a sort of heavy in a nice way. That drapes really beautifully, and if you do get the chance to touch them, which I would rather you didn't, they feel really good too. Let's see. Oh, I should mention this rug. I'm a little bit of I have to watch myself and not go too crazy with animal prints. This is an antelope print, but the reason I want to point it out is it's so forgiving of accidents or spills, and it looks great. And even though it is beige colors, it really lightens up this room, which could easily go very dark, being so dark green. That also is why I picked out this lucite table, because I didn't want anything visually heavy, and I think it's really just a nice open, light feeling for the room. So that is really most of what I wanted to talk about here. I just put this plate wall up a couple of months ago. All my friends and relatives have predicted that all the plates will fall, but so far they're holding on really great. This is a pattern called Island Tree, and it was made, I think, in the mid-1900s. And this one, I believe, was not Lenox, another China maker, but almost every major China maker made a version of this, and they're all really quite fun and lively and have this kind of crazy tree in the middle of them. So we have the green room on one side of the foyer, and on the other side we have the dining room. And the dining room is a place where we gather a lot with friends and family. It's a place we use a lot, especially in the cold months. So I wanted this to be very friendly and versatile. This table expands to seat about 12 or even 14 if we squeeze people in on either end. This light fixture is a flower, which is a very, very significant kind of symbol to me, because I love gardening and flowers and flower arranging. I'm a member of a garden club, and I actually found this in an online store, but I've never seen it anywhere else. So I feel very happy about that too. Another sort of gardening element we have in this room are these faux boxwood topiaries, which are really very formal and speak to kind of an English garden sensibility, which I really love a lot. And again, here's some more window treatments that I really like. These are patterned with a very famous old print called Pine Hollyhock. It comes in a lot of different colorways. This one's navy and light blue. It comes in a beautiful charcoal and I think a couple of other ones. So normally I really like solid colored drapes, but for this room I wanted to have the Pine Hollyhock because it's a favorite, and I decided to get the lamp shades also made out of the Pine Hollyhock. So that's what we have here. Little element of pink. I'm a fan of pink, as you'll see in the next room. This is an interesting piece. It's called an upholsterer's mirror, and it is itself upholstered, and apparently upholsterers once upon a time might be working on something, a piece of furniture, and they stick their pins into here, so they would always be handy. And I haven't seen this anywhere else. I got it at a store up in Connecticut when I was attending Trade Secrets, which is a really fun garden and antiquity kind of and garden tour event that was organized by Bunny Williams many years ago and continues every year. Her garden is always on it, and I totally recommend you go to it if you like gardens and you like garden things. This is just a fun little detail of these tassels. I had these chairs and this server were sort of boring brown pieces, so I had them lacquered, and I really love the way it came out because, I don't know, you see the lines a little bit more in the lighter color, and I think it just, again, seems so fresh to have that. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a very furry fabric, so if you sit down there, you kind of get a little surprise of softness. The wallpaper in here is a kind of grass cloth, but its scale and texture is really a little bit exaggerated. So it feels like a cozy little sweater. People also comment on that a lot. These are old, so they contrast with these candelabra over here, the white ones that are sort of modern and new. But I really like the contrast. I got these at a consignment store that's nearby, and I think they're really great. Dining room can always use more candlelight as far as I'm concerned. Then there's a piece of art here that I really love. It ties in, of course, with the pink and blue and the chinoiserie theme that is also one of my favorites. This is a painting by Jan Weir, and she is someone who I've actually taken art classes with and who continues to paint really beautiful things. One of her favorite design still life approaches that she uses is she's somebody that loves fabric, so she likes to paint a fabric pattern in the background of her still life, and that's what you see here. That's a little ambitious. If you're a painter, it'd be much easier just to do a bunch of solid colors or textures, but she goes the extra mile and adds that interesting, surprising element. The vibe in this dining room when I'm hosting or having people over is, fortunately or unfortunately, kind of over the top, especially with garden arrangements, tables, settings, centerpieces. I don't know, I really like everybody to sit down and be at the same table if I can, because it's just more fun. The way I like to set up the table if we're eating in here is probably the table would be expanded. I have a beautiful linens that I love. And especially I love, look at these. These are amazing, huge. These are beautiful starched antique napkins. And I get them basically dry clean because I can't make them look so perfect if I try and iron them myself. And I use, you'll see on a table that we have outside set up for my sister's birthday tonight, we have napkin rings that have been in my family. Some of them are newer, some are older, but I love to use those because they really chime with how my family had dinner together every night. There were 5 kids. My mom wanted to always use cloth napkins, but she didn't want to wash the napkins every night, so we had napkin holders and we put our napkin back in and used it for a few days or a week before it was washed. And then my china is in the kitchen, but the reason it's in there is I use it every day because it reminds me so much of my parents, and I don't want to save it just for a special occasion. Before we go into the kitchen, I want to show you the cozy room. Come with me. Now, there is a lot going on in this room. I have a friend, I had an art show recently, and a friend who helped me hang paintings all over the house and in my art studio. And she insisted on taking a lot of stuff out because I think she thought it would be visually distracting. So I guess it could be too much for some people, but I really love it. I always wanted, when I moved to this house, I knew I wanted significant amount of pink. So I have all these pink drapes, and they are not custom drapes. The other ones that we saw are custom, but these are not. And I think if you can't afford custom drapes, a really great, easy thing to do is to buy them online from, any place. Lots of places have them, West Elm, RH. And then you can have a beautiful tape. Have a tailor, like a dry cleaner tailor, can put that on. And then the key is really probably to order it longer than you need. Hang the curtain where it should be hung and make sure you get them hemmed. Don't just hang the curtain depending on the length you bought, because it's probably going to be too low. These are hung, they could even go higher, closer to the ceiling. Usually that's better. And then if they puddle on the floor, then you should get them hemmed. but don't just get something that's shorter because they're less expensive. Anyways, it looks very custom. They don't hang quite as perfectly as custom drapes, but they are really very pretty, I think, and a good solution, especially when you need so many panels like in this room. One of the things I love in this room is the rug. It is a rug that was designed by a woman who has a store in Philadelphia. She also sells her family's Persian. They've been in the rug business for generations. But this is one of her original designs, and it was custom colored for me, as kind of all her rugs, her original rugs are. And it's a very fanciful feel with lots of curls and curlicues. So I like that a lot. But what is interesting is that she draws inspiration for her designs from skyline and rooftops in Philadelphia. I'm not sure what building this came from, but that's where the idea came from. We use this design, we have used it for Gardner Fox clients with different colorways, and she, the rug designer, can change the shape of all these things as well as the color. So it's a really fun piece to have in here. The other thing here I wanted to mention is this beautiful arrangement is just about 5 or 6, they're not branches, they're actually shrubs. It's meadow rue or thalictrum, and it grows with these beautiful tiers of parallel leaves, and it just makes a really pretty arrangement with nothing else in a vase. So just wanted to show that off. In here we have some art pieces. This one feels very personal to me. It's a photograph by Joyce Tennyson, and it means a lot to me because Joyce Tennyson was in the first book that I wrote, which is called What I Know Now, Letters to My Younger Self. So Joyce Tennyson wrote to her younger self when she was a young photographer trying to break into New York. And at that time, photography and who could make it and who was sort of making it or not making it was really determined by just a few old white men writing for influential magazines, and they didn't let her in. They didn't let very many women photographers in at all. So her letter was to her younger self about that, and it was a beautiful letter. But anyways, this piece is autobiographical. So this is a man turning his back on a young girl, and it's very ephemeral, and it has this gauzy sort of vibe to it. And I know that it's one of the pieces she's the most proud of, so I really love this. And then this one over here is by a man who is an art teacher at the boarding school that I went to, and it's actually the hospital, the entrance of the hospital on Ellis Island. So the hospital is closed to people, or at least it always has been, but he was able to gain entry. And in order to get this shot, he had to open the shutter, and I think he had to leave for hours, just left it open because it was so dark. There was very little light. And that round shape at the top is where a clock used to be at the entry of the hospital. But to me, it has a kind of a look of a cathedral also, and I think it's a really wonderful visual image. But what it signifies is even better, which is that so many immigrants came here sick and unwell. They couldn't gain entry, but instead of turning them away, we made them well, and they were able to enter the country after they regained their health. When we were looking at this house, this was the room that really made me feel like, ooh, I think this is the place, because it has higher ceilings, it has a feeling of airiness. At the same time, it has this very large, very nice fireplace. And honestly, when we first looked at the house, I had no idea how great this fireplace is, because it has a hearth, it's raised. So when you're sitting down, you have the fire really going almost at eye level. So it's become the cozy room here. And it was configured quite differently when we looked at this. I think they had a sofa kind of facing the fireplace and chairs on either end. So we wanted to really make this a place that a lot of people could sit down. So you'll see there are a lot of chairs. I really like having a bar in this room and available for friends to help themselves. The reason it's the bar and happy hour are really fun is because my dad, who was a West Point graduate, was a very straight arrow for years. He didn't drink, didn't smoke. Then finally came to the point where he enjoyed a wee dram, as he called it. So there are a couple things on here on this bar that remind me of him. One is this ice bucket that is actually not a very special ice bucket in terms of its value. I think it's silver plate. But when he was in school, he won an award that was called the Loving Cup. And whenever one of us would misbehave or do something wrong, he would say, "I think you need to go worship at the Loving Cup." And it became such a family joke that we decided for, I think, his 50th birthday to give him another Loving Cup. And that is this one, which we talk about the need to worship at the Loving Cup. And we have all of our nicknames engraved on here. So that is kind of a reminder of my dad. And then my family actually has a big connection to the Army on both sides. My grandmother, actually my great-great-grandfather on my grandmother's side, was General Van Vliet, and he was in the Civil War. He was the quartermaster to Ulysses Grant, and he was awarded this silver tray for his service and also for his helping of orphans of sailors and soldiers. And it's dated 1867. So that has a place of honor, and I don't let people make drinks on it all the time because I don't want to scratch it up, but I definitely wanted to show it to you today. I've always been really a creative person, and so working on this house has been a total delight. Fortunately, I have a husband who is very accommodating and helpful about it, and then approves of almost everything I do. Before I moved here, though, my main creative focus was writing. I was a journalist for 25 years and then segued into writing books and later speaking, usually for corporations. The first book I did was this one called What I Know Now, Letters to My Younger Self. The idea was working with well-known women from all fields, all ages, and collaborating with them on writing a letter to themselves at a younger age with a message about something that would have helped them at a super difficult time. So that was really my focus. I did 3 of those books with that same theme, same concept. And then I started speaking for corporations. Typically, I'd work with women's groups at, say, Johnson & Johnson, large companies like that. And we would work with some of the top women at their companies on letters to their younger self and then present them to other women at the company. So it was a way to try and get women who are, not very many of them, at the top at some of these companies. It's a way to kind of spread the wealth of other women in the company, understanding them, getting to know them, and most importantly, seeing that they're not perfect. They didn't have sort of a, effortless rise to the top, which is what you tend to think. And that's what actually people think about the people in this book, too, is that, Queen Noor and Madeleine Albright, all these people had no problem, but actually they did. They had a lot of problems and difficulties that are not so different from ours. So that was a really fulfilling career, but when I moved here, I just really felt, okay, I've done that. I don't want to beat that concept to death. And I really leaned more into art and started taking classes. And I've had a lot of fun doing that. It's so different to be creative visually in some ways, but I do feel like interior design, which is what I do now for Gardner Fox, is also very creative and rewarding. Making people's houses be filled with happiness and light and color is, I think, one of the greatest jobs on earth. Speaking of Gardner Fox, they remodeled our kitchen and they did a great job. I'd love to show that to you. Should we go check it out? So here we are in a kitchen that is so different from what it used to look like. And there's somebody very important you should meet here, Wonder Girl. Here she is. Hello, good girl. You want to say hi? She's a rescue dog, and believe it or not, the rescue team named her Wonder Girl, and we decided you can't improve on that. So she's continuing. She's about 13 years old now, but she still looks very beautiful on white surfaces so that you can see how her colors are still strong. This is a beautiful banquette that I had recovered recently with green on the back so that you can see it's talking here to this mural. This mural is so fun. It reminds me of Where the Wild Things Are, that artist. And when you have the kitchen lit up at night, even a little bit, and you're coming in from outside, it's just so fun because you've got the greenery outside and then you're sort of headed towards another green forest inside. So that's fun. This banquette, I was going to say, is also usually covered up because that's where Wonder Girl and her compatriot like to sleep all day long. But for you, it's uncovered. This camel I really love. I got it on Cherish. I think I seem to have a thing for white ceramic pieces, especially if they're animals. And I thought, since the real rascal of the two dogs is out of the house right now, I could put these little meadow-like flowers around it and pretend that he's in a meadow. Let's see. Oh, this is really something interesting that I did. Kitchens have so many hard surfaces. So, especially because, we walk in from the side entrance through the cozy room to the kitchen. This is a big piece of what you see, and I really didn't want just a boring piece of wood or cabinetry. So it's an upholstered panel with a little bit of nail head trim, and it's faux leather, so you can use a sponge on it, which I really haven't had to do that often, but both ends are upholstered, and it's a nice little bit of softness, I think, for the kitchen. This is a quartzite table countertop, and it's got a nice pattern. It's a lot like marble, I think, in terms of its warmth and look, and I have found it really helpful and useful, pretty durable. Here's another piece of art by Jan Weir, who did the piece in the dining room, and it's of Wonder Girl. I gave a painting of my sister's dog to her for her birthday a few years ago, and as a surprise, she gave me one by the same artist of Wonder Girl for my birthday that year. And she likes to put either wreaths around their neck or flower crowns on the pets, which I think is really cute. I also think it's a really exceptional likeness. This kitchen used to be very dark. It was an old, 1960s, 70s kitchen with a peninsula, one glass door over here, and one window over the sink, and lots of cabinetry overhead. So when Gardner Fox remodeled it, I said I really want a lot of natural light. So we've got a lot of glass in here and only a handful of upper cabinets. So to help us store things, we put a whole wall of pantry shelving in the garden room at the end there. So we have to walk a few steps to get things, but it's really fine. I'd much rather have the light. The floor is a tile that looks like wood. And I knew I wanted a herringbone pattern to have some energy and motion going on in here. And just as a little bit of emphasis, we put this brass inlay, obviously in the same shape as the herringbone. So it doesn't really shout at you, but it is a little bit of bling there, just that catches your eye. And you'd be surprised how many people actually notice it. The backsplash in here is kind of unusual. I think they're usually rectangular tiles of some color or style, usually subway tile. But I really fell in love with this because it's so different. It has a lot of energy. It looks like leaves or flowers in a kind of a collaged way. And I think it actually ends up sort of referencing the wall mural with all the trees and the leaves over there too. So I think it's really a garden theme in the kitchen, sort of. I keep my china in the kitchen because it's my good china, but I like to use my good china every day because it reminds me of my parents who actually used it every day, and it was their parents before them. So we have these drawers right next to the dishwasher, which makes it really handy for putting away and taking out. This is the china that was my grandmother's. It's called Rose Minton, and it's very sweet. It's very old-fashioned, but I really like the flowers on it and the colors. I have a lot of blue in my house and in the dining room, and it works with that, but it also works almost anywhere, so that's very handy. The china I got when I was married is also nice. It's Queensbird by Spode, and it's quite sweet too. I might need to switch out my everyday back to my wedding china, because now that I look at it, I realize how much I like this one too. But we are kind of china aficionados here. I'm not as bad as my sister. She's got a whole wall of it. I've mentioned my sister a couple of times, and it just so happens that today is her birthday, and I'm hosting a party for her later. I've set up the patio outside with an amazing centerpiece floral arrangement. Let's go take a look. I can't wait to show you. This is for my sister, Jody. The setup is really a nice block print tablecloth. I'm a real fan of block prints lately, and I think this one is really nice with the china that my parents and grandparents used. Actually, full disclosure, my sister has even more of the same china, so she will feel very at home. This flower arrangement I made, we have a sort of a family tradition for Thanksgivings and birthdays to try and do something a little bit extravagant, a little bit different, a little fun in terms of centerpieces or foliage or flowers. Some of this came from my garden, this lace cap hydrangea and these hydrangea, and this is a pretty baptisia foliage. The others I bought from the snapdragons and this Queen Anne's lace, these little green bachelor buttons, bought from a really great flower exchange that I found recently. These are, a lot of people have these now. I think they're really great. I love candles, but these are lights you can't really see during the daylight, but they are a nice way to have lamps on the table without any cords. And then these raffia mats, I think, kind of chime with the block print. It's a little bit of a casual feel, even though we've got china and silver. And then these napkin rings are really part of a family tradition. My parents use them. We use them almost every night. So some of these, like this one, is newer, but this one's quite old. And this one has my father's initials on it. This one is so cute because we carried on having napkin rings at a lot of our dinners, my daughter, when she was in high school, took a silversmithing class, and she decided to make a napkin ring for my husband. And the way she did the monogram is sort of the opposite of how monograms are usually done. The center initial is tiny, and the other ones on the side are much bigger. So I think that's really cute. The other thing I like to do when we entertain is really start out at the allee, because at sort of 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, there's a little bit of shade and dappled light. It's a great place to have a little cocktail, have a destination to go to, and then change scenes having dinner here later on. We just put in this pergola, which is a real game changer, I think, and a new product, so maybe people won't know about it. It's automated, so I can open the louvers and close them, changing the light conditions depending on what you want. In the summer, it's southern exposure here and super hot, so it's nice to have shade and be able to sit outside. You can just angle it and have a little bit, and then in the winter, when you really don't want shade, you are craving light inside, I can keep them open. They close automatically if it rains, so I do have covers for my furniture, but I'm starting to feel like maybe I really don't need them all the time because it's pretty safe under here. This is a patio we put in 2017, a couple years after we moved here, and there was just a small kind of deck here, and we wanted to take it all the way to line up with the end of the garage wall there, so that we could obviously have more space, but also we could have a nice outlook at that end of the patio over to the distant views. This is about 2 acres. In Chester County, where we are, Willistown Township, actually, there's a 4-acre sort of zoning minimum for most places, but I believe this was at an earlier time, for some reason, a handful of houses right around here have a smaller acreage, 2 acres, which is, believe me, plenty for me. But it's been fun to really learn so much about gardening here on so much property. One of the first things we did is decide we don't want to just look at a hard garage wall over here. So we put this trellis up, and this is a clematis. It's either lady dye or princess dye, and it's not a super flat, showy clematis like a lot of them are. It's more of a tube shape, and the hummingbirds really love this. That's the kind of flower that they really attracted to. And then I started this espalier in 2017. It was only 2 levels. It's 4 kinds of apples grafted onto the stock. So I brought it up 1 more level and made it wider. And apples actually seem to have a every other year kind of bumper crop. I'll get apples every year, but on the second year, there may be, I don't know, 40 apples on these 3 limbs. And then the year after that, there'll just be a handful. So it's apparently just something that you get used to in apple orchards. This was, I don't know if you would know this or not, but espaliers were created to maximize fruit production in minimal space. So if you didn't have a lot of land, but you wanted to grow a lot of fruit, you would have rows of these espaliers. I just wanted to have something green against the garage wall. So that is something we did, and it seems like it's doing pretty well. Now I'd love to show you my art studio. It's where I spend a lot of time, especially if I have a show coming up. Come on with me. So the art studio is just across the way. This is past a few garden beds, including these towers that are beautiful in the winter when nothing's on them, and then really nice when the clematis starts blooming. I have some garden beds over there with Verbena bonariensis growing, and there's some Turk's cap lilies that are those fun upturned petal flowers. Here is the allee leading to the art studio. This is one of our favorite cocktail spots. It's the allium here are just finished, so they're not bright purple anymore. I let them stay up really quite a while until they're almost perfectly dried out. And then I like to collect them and use them later dried, stuck into Christmas trees so that it looks like spiky balls all over the tree. This is very classic garden design, the Leuten's bench. It doesn't look that comfortable, but it really is as long as you have the pillows. We add a few more chairs over there, depending on how many people we have. This is a really great Brio fire pit. I don't know if you know about them. They really don't smoke much after you get the fire going. It's got this double-walled insulation so that it swirls around and you can sit close to it without having to constantly get up and move around to avoid the smoke. So that's a good thing for winter. So here we are at the studio. Small but mighty. This is the art studio. It's a really charming little space, and we had it insulated so that with a little air conditioner in the summer and a space heater in the winter, it's very cozy. This piece is something I'm still working on right now. This one over here is a little hard to see, but it's an abstract of basically a map. I used to do a lot of the abstracts. I noticed in my brother-in-law's boat, he has a chart plotter, and it's a very brightly colored thing showing the depth and the land masses in different colors. It looks like very abstract art all by itself, so I decided I would do that. So I have a whole series of these I did of the Chesapeake. This one is a Matisse-inspired star. He used to draw and paint 9, 10 spiked stars that are all completely asymmetrical. I've always loved those, so I decided to do a bunch of those. And this is just an abstract of using some of my favorite colors, which are reds and pinks and blues and turquoise. And over here, because you met her earlier, you might recognize this girl. That's Wonder Girl. We call her the love bully because she makes you love her. She demands it. And that's the art studio. Okay, we're coming back inside now, and we are in my garden room, which is probably the craziest room in the house because I picked out this Marimekko wallpaper I have always wanted to use, and it's that similar green as in the green room. The green room color is actually a Benjamin Moore color, seaweed. I don't really like the name, but it's a good color. I think of it as emerald. This is a little bit brighter, and it also allowed me to use this dark green Mexican tile that I think is so atmospheric. We did this really great shape here. It's a Korean countertop, which is not a very fancy countertop, but I really was interested more in the contrast, black, white, green, than the material. And I love this faucet. It's a Rohr faucet, and it's where we can pop the dogs in and give them a bath. Actually, we can come in from just outside and do it easily without them getting muddy tracks all over the place. This is actually appropriately named the garden room because I do arrange flowers. This is a butcher block actually from a butcher in Maine. My husband died when I got this because it's so heavy. None of us will ever be able to move it again. I can't even remember how we got it in here, but fortunately I think it's well placed. So I do flower arranging here, dog supplies are in here, garden things, and some art supplies, some art things I need for cleaning my brushes, like dirty jars, are in here. Flower tubes, I don't know if you've ever used those, but if you ever need to put a flower in something that doesn't have hold water. You can use a flower tube, just fill it with water, put the cap on it, and then stick your flower in. And then they're not super special, but tons of vessels and containers for arranging flowers or just sticking a few buds in. I think that some of these are olive oil glass jars. They're nothing but the shapes I like. So, oh, and this is really fun. This is if people are out at the allee having a cocktail and it's time for dinner, I can summon them. And this is nice too. You see this more now, but when we did this, it wasn't very common to have this wire mesh instead of a wood panel. I think it's just fun. And then I love these big chunky brass handles too. They just add a little bit of jewelry. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, I just painted all these designs on this gold lantern. I found this down in West Palm Beach in a consignment store. I think it has such a cute shape, but I knew I wanted to put it in here, so I just took the opportunity to paint a little design in green and black on it, and I think it came out pretty well. Home. That is a big word, isn't it, for such a little word? To me, home is a light-filled space with a spirited energy that draws people in and causes them to want to gather. And of course, I can't think of home without thinking family. Not only family, but certainly family is a big piece of what makes a home. So my job is really to provide the setting that allows people to be joyful and connect with each other and happy. Homeworthy, it has been a true pleasure to have you here today. You've been great. Thank you so much. But now I do have to prepare for my sister's birthday party tonight. So see you later.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.